This is the Data Privacy Detective. October is Happy Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Now, this has been a nationally declared month since 2004. So, this is the 21st year for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Well, how happy should we be about personal information that we share with our attorneys? Now, many would assume that when we communicate with an attorney, our discussions are, in general, very private, securely private, privileged, that later on, no investigator or government can force an attorney and a client to say what they talked about together. Surely, when our personal information is held in a data form by a law firm, the data is secure as well, right? Well, is it? Or can that data leak and expose our most confidential information to third parties, some of which are not, let's face it, very nice people? Well, let's consider how one of the organizations that holds sensitive private information about people and organizations faces cyber risks, and what the best practices are for preventing the hacks and the thefts of personally identifiable information held by law firms. You know, if law firms are leaking sensitive personal information because of cyber risks, well, that tells us a lot about how our privacy in general is secure or not in the modern digital age. Well, before we get to law firms, let's recognize that we all have a role in data privacy as individuals. The four so-called easy ways to stay safe online, according to the National Coordinator for Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience of the U.S. government, gives us these four simple points. Use strong passwords. Number two, turn on MFA, multi-factor authentication, whenever it's possible. Number three, recognize and report phishing with a PH way of spelling phishing. And number four, keep all of your software updated. Don't ignore those. You need to update your software requests. Now, that's excellent advice. Four simple things we all need to be doing as individuals. But you know, when we talk about data privacy, you hear a lot about how individuals need to do a better job, that we're the ones who make mistakes, that 80% of cybersecurity incidents start with a person making a mistake. Well, that could be so. But this reminds me a lot about automobile safety before Ralph Nader and things changed with vehicles. I remember the time when automobiles didn't come with seat belts, before infant seats were standard equipment required throughout the country, a lot of the world. And what changed was the idea of safety by design becoming standard and legally required when a vehicle is produced and sold. Well, in many ways, we're at the same stage as many years ago with vehicles for data safety and privacy protection. Data safety shouldn't depend entirely on whether we as individuals avoid mistakes, because we're not going to avoid all mistakes. People are human. We need an architecture and privacy by design built into how our data is collected and used by others. Well, with that, let's consider the state of privacy today within United States law firms. The American Bar Association reported in 2021 that 25% of law firms have suffered a data breach, and 40% of them didn't know they were attacked. Now, this is a report that one can worry about. That doesn't sound terribly secure. One can say, well, 75% of law firms didn't have a data breach as far as we know. That can be so, but law enforcement that deal with data privacy sometimes say you can categorize a business, any business, in one of two ways: those that have been victims of a data breach and those that will be the victims of a data breach. Well, insurers that insure law firms do their best to get their insureds and all lawyers to adopt better data privacy practices. And let's talk about this. The Ohio Bar, the Liability Insurance Corporation, offers a cyber toolbox. Now, this is for solo practitioners and large firms and everything in between. The first thing that it recommends is insurance. But of course, insurance is a financial risk control for a firm, not itself a privacy protection strategy. And the Ohio insurer recommends strong cybersecurity practices. So let's go through what they are. In general, they summarize as training, strong password policies, multi-factor authentication, and keeping your software up to date, just like what was mentioned before. For good practices, no question about it. But all of those put the onus on individuals and firm leadership rather than on the architecture of data. The Ohio insurer offers a toolbox and the interesting report. It reports attacks by China on huge Wall Street firms to get at secrets, some personal, some about critically important information of an inventor or a company. One may recall the Panama law firm that was attacked and released 2.6 terabytes of data. That's a lot of data. 11.5 million sensitive records that were exposed about all sorts of things their clients that, of course, thought would be kept secret. The most common attack, it is reported by the Ohio insurer, is spear phishing. Now, that's going after a targeted individual at a firm to phish with a PH and allow the malactor to get into the system. It's kind of a way of planting a Trojan horse with malware or spyware that can then be activated later to take data. And there are 9 specific steps recommended for all law firms. And let me go through them with you. Number 1, develop a comprehensive information security plan, one that's designed to prevent data breaches. And there's an American Bar Association Cybersecurity Handbook, which lists a way to put together such a plan. Number 2, conduct a risk assessment, one that can be helped by the services of independent IT vendors who are objective and don't assume that all will go well. Number 3, use appropriate encryption technology on servers, desktops, laptops, and all mobile devices. Good advice. Number 4, limit access to computer systems, email, and directories to known and trusted users only, and implement and follow appropriate password policies. A team effort required, obviously, on that one. Number 5, develop and follow a data retention and destruction policy so that personal data is not at risk, at least any longer than it needs to be. It is important to sanitize, the Ohio insurer says, and to get rid of personal information that's no longer needed. And frankly, to avoid collecting personal data that's not essential in the first place. If you don't collect it, you're not at risk of sharing it with a third party. And the Ohio insurer says that law firms should analyze where data is kept, sensitive data, and limit the number of places where it's retained so that the fewer pockets of opportunity, the better. Number 6, keep antivirus and security software up to date, and obviously apply the patches immediately when they're recommended. Take steps not to allow law firm users of IT to use them until they've done that. Number 7, educate employees. This is the training point about how sensitive data should be handled and protected, involving email and use and protection of passwords and all the rest of the cybersecurity training that can be done. Number 8, implement and follow a written Internet Security Protocol, a WISP, W-I-S-P. Now, this would explain how Internet access and usage can be conducted on firm computers or can't be conducted on firm computers and the limits on such usage. So this employee education process is required for this, but it's management of this exposure that needs to continue through employee exit strategies, because after all, disgruntled, unhappy former employees can pose a significant risk for a potential data breach in any organization. And number 9, develop and advance a comprehensive breach preparedness plan. Now, this will help once a data breach occurs rather than being preventive, but designing the plan can certainly emphasize and get a firm ready in case there is a data breach, because intermediate steps must be taken. Now, let's think for a minute about these 9 things we've just heard from a leading Ohio insurer of law firms. All 9 rely on individuals within a firm, including the IT staff or third-party consultants, to try to prevent hacks and invasions of the firm's data systems. It's recognized that some of the bad actors here are disgruntled or otherwise untrustworthy individuals within firms. So by their own advice, an insurer recognizes that hacks will happen, even if best practices are followed. And beyond that, there are laws certainly to punish cyber criminals. That helps. But that isn't going to stop the leaks, especially given where many of the cyber criminals reside around the world and can't really be brought to justice. Recommendation number 3 that I mentioned in this list comes probably the closest to capture what is essential if we really want to increase cybersecurity for the personal data held by law firms and other organizations. It calls for appropriate encryption technology within firm systems. Now we're getting at how the system is built, the architecture of data flows. Encryption is certainly part of privacy-centric architecture and proper modern information technology, but that alone is going to be inadequate. Data minimization by design of a system, separate storage of particularly sensitive personal information that is protected better than other information, siloing of particularly sensitive things, minimizing where it's stored within a firm's IT system. All of this can be done through equipment and related services that are designed to be privacy-centric. So just as seatbelts in vehicles became an accepted imperative that saved countless lives over the generations, data safety, too, can be more secure. If we insist on equipment and built-in features of IT systems that protect law firm data from malactors and treat confidential private information with the protective focus that it deserves, that is not to ignore the 9 excellent best practices urged, as we've described in this podcast, that all individuals, IT staffs, and law firm leaders have to have. But those are a good start, not the end of the race in this race to protect our most confidential, private, personal information. As always, I'll close by reminding us all protecting your personal privacy and data begins with you.